That didn't work well.
All right, what we got? Janet, is that time? Anybody got a real answer to watch?
Close.
Good to go?
See, okay?
7 o'clock, everybody good?
Good.
Good evening and welcome to the December 2nd meeting of the Los Angeles Groves Town Council. We have the roll call, please.
Mayor Browning.
Here.
Vice Mayor Gerald.
Here.
Councilman Goldenay.
Here.
Councilman Liang.
Here.
Councilman Rocket.
Here. If you would stand for the pledge, remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, again we ask for wisdom. We thank you for this Thanksgiving season and for all we're thankful for the fact that we've gone through this year with no hurricanes. We're thankful for that. As we come into this Christmas season, let us remember the reason and celebrate it all over the world. Give us a good meeting, we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Are there any changes to the agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Tom.
I'd like to add in the new business a discussion of the concept of different method of staggering the terms of the council.
Okay. So it'll be under new business?
Yes, sir.
What was that different method?
Staggering terms. Staggering terms.
Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
So,
Okay, second, Tom. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
aye.
Okay. So entertain a motion to accept the agenda as amended. Okay, Ryan makes a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Tom. Further discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. A motion to accept the consent agenda.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Jim. Second by Ryan. Discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Consent agenda motion passes 5-0. Public comments. I have Jonathan, is yours public comment?
I believe so, that's what I was told to put under man.
Okay, yeah, come on up. Okay, I apologize. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, your name, your address.
Okay, my name's Jonathan Hopper. I live at 15242 Scotts Place, Osage, Florida. My wife and I are looking to start a home air conditioning company. That would be out of the house, so I got my license, contractor, insured, everything like that. Went to go do my tax and realized that there's a statute within the council that doesn't have a homestead exemption. I was looking to the council to see if that could be possibly amended or changed. We've been there for 3 years. A suggestion that I would maybe bring to the council would be, if I was homestead exemption, the fee to get the zoning approval to go get my county tax license would be $20. And maybe if you're not homesteaded, to possibly incur that to $100. Because I would be willing to pay, to be able to get that, so I don't have to change the address or use another address to locate the business, because we've been there for 3 years, and we'll abide by the other statutes. There's not going to be signage, there'll be a phone and a computer, and it'll be a service industry, so it'll be out to the public, not people coming into the home.
Yeah, you would need to get with the town office.
Okay?
Our purpose for that is so that people that live in Los Angeles Groves, their residents,
Yes, sir.
if they have a business like that, that's why we are looking for the homestead exemption, rather than somebody that just buys a house here
Yes, sir.
to run a business. So I would suggest you get with Bill at the office and see what you can work out.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Moving to, we have no presentations. So number 5, Virginia Standish, Financial Advisory and Audit Committee. Come on.
Virginia Standish, reporting for the Monday, November 24th. The August, September, and October 2014 financials were approved, 5-0. There were some minor issues and some variances. Variances were not quite correct in the percentages. And the financial activity report, the cheat sheet as we call it in October, the transportation revenue, there was an item in there as if it was collected. It has not been collected from the best that I can tell in the actual numbers. But those were small little issues that did not affect the actual numbers. So the financials were approved and we continued on. Also, September 30th, as you know, marked the end of the previous year. There's still revenue to collect for the previous year, such as FPL and other utilities. It'll take about 30 to 90 days to get all of this in, and then you will be presented with an actual complete year-end financial. So at this point, I'm not going to waste your time with what revenue versus expenses were. It's a moot point. The town ended the old year and started the new year with a bank balance of $3,187,437.23. October marked the beginning of the new year, and at month end, an 8% completion of the year. The October ending bank balance was $3,179,837.03. A small little point, recycling revenue for October was $873. So people are recycling. You don't think it's much money, but it's a positive thing, okay? Gas tax is estimated to continue to generate approximately $368,000 for the year. We've already discussed in previous months that other potential sources of revenue are expected to decline. Nothing has changed there. The committee received an update on software vendor proposals, which the town manager will cover this evening. Also, it should be noted that at a landowners meeting, I had asked the PBSO, and I brought this up at the committee meeting, and I want to bring it to your attention. I had asked Lieutenant Combs about ticket revenue, and he said it's estimated to be $2 a ticket, which seems like nothing, but when you're earning $12 on $3 million in the bank, $2 is $2. And he identified the issue is that, or a point of note, is when tickets are being written, if they don't write Loxahatchee Gross on there, they write Loxahatchee, it means the county's getting the money. Right now, that seems trivial. However, when all this traffic starts coming through here, we need to make sure we're getting that money.
Thank you. Any questions for Virginia? Thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to accept the financials for July through September fiscal year 2014 and October fiscal year 2015.
Okay, second by, motion by Jim, second by Ryan. Discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Moving to 6A.
I guess I'll handle it, Mayor. 6A is an agreement, a resolution, an agreement with the supervisor of elections for the March 10th election in Loxahatchee. It sets in place the needed equipment, time, effort, energy, and getting the ballots prepared. We would recommend that you approve the resolution to enter into the agreement with the supervisor of elections.
The resolution also sets your qualifying period, your election date, your polling places, and all those other election matters. It's something you do every year for your elections.
All right, so you want to read the
Yeah,
resolution?
I'll read the resolution. A resolution of the Town Council of the Town of Loxahatchee, Florida, designating the date, time, and place to qualify and file for the office of council member for seats 1 and 3 prior to the municipal general election to be held on Tuesday, March 10, 2015, pursuant to the Town Charter and Chapters 97-106 Florida statutes. The election filing period opens promptly at 12 noon on January 27, 2015, and closes promptly at 12 noon on February 3, 2015. Setting filing fees, authorizing town clerk to appoint election boards for election precinct 6094. Authorizing supervisor election to conduct the town election, and approving the agreement between the town and the Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections for election services. Authorizing town clerk or designee to handle certain election matters, opting out of early voting, providing for conflicts, severability, and effective date.
All right. Someone like to make a motion? We'll get a motion second, then we'll discuss it.
I'll make a motion to accept the resolution number 2014-21.
Motion by Ron, second by Ryan. Discussion by council members? I've got nothing for the public on this, so all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Moving to ordinance 7A.
Oh, Mayor, Town Council, tonight the planner's not able to be here, but I will try to explain it to the best of my ability. If I fail, I do have the town attorney to assist me in
Okay.
that regard. Basically, this is the first reading of an ordinance discussing and setting forth certain criteria and parameters surrounding the Okeechobee Boulevard corridor, we'll call it. In essence, it's set up three categories: an activity center, a cottage industry, and an individual's business. The three categories required certain levels of FAR. I think the lowest was about 0.25, generally a 0.05. You could get, with certain criteria, a little improvement. If this information went to the P&Z board, and based on their recommendation, they came back and said we should enter, they recommended that council consider going into a zoning in progress in order to set in place an ordinance that would then set forth a moratorium. That is one option that the P&Z, I believe, stating it correctly, that was their position. They thought it was a good first draft that we brought forward with the concept of the three activities. There was discussion relative to cottage industry. There was some discussion relative to the activity center. It also limited total commercial on Okeechobee Boulevard to a total of 49,000 square feet, which had some background relative to 25 square feet per resident per build out, and then some mathematics to come up with 10 square feet, which is where we get 49,000 square feet, which left about 19 available after the last approval. With all that, we're bringing it forward with two motions for you to consider, either or table this and recommend, or what is it, move into.
Announce the zoning in progress and do a moratorium while you continue to develop this plan.
And then the second would be to approve it, at which point we would transmit, and still we're going to do a zoning in progress and do a moratorium and move forward in that fashion, either way.
Okay, I think what we're going to do is we're going to discuss it before we make a motion, because we really don't know which motion we're going to make. So, council members, what are your thoughts? Ron?
I'd like to see us table it and put in for a moratorium for 6 months. And the reason being is the P&Z, they didn't really get a chance to have any input on this. And we talked about, even though it's called cottage industry, it kind of coincides with what we're arguing about as far as people coming on the property and going off the property. I'd like to hear from Grace tonight, but I would like to see us table it and request a moratorium for 6 months. If we go with the zoning in progress, the only problem there, it allows someone to go ahead and put in an application. Now, I don't believe we've had anybody put in an application for Okeechobee Boulevard because it's been probably 2 years since we put the other.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be the zoning in progress is to do the moratorium so that you wouldn't have somebody get in while you're doing the comp plan. You've done moratoriums in the past, and but it's been 2 years since your last moratorium. And so, in understanding you're going to be taking some affirmative steps this time. If you were going to move in that direction, then the moratorium makes sense.
So the zoning in progress basically means until that is done.
No one's coming in.
No one's
zoning
coming
in
in.
progress is until we get the moratorium in place.
Okay, any other council members?
I don't understand the reason why we would need to do this, because I think that this actually creates entitlements. And that with the current AR zoning and AR land use that we have, people would have to go through a process in order to get the land use changes. And some of the larger parcels that which we would be concerned exceed 10 acres. secondly, it was quite a bit of doing for him to try to do that. So I'm concerned that we're gonna just create nearly 20,000 square foot and put it out there now. And that once we do that, that somebody isn't gonna just come along and want 20 more, or 30 more, or 70 more, or whatever. And I think that we are in a better position to say that we're, not really inclined to make that kind of change on Okeechobee. And that retail commercial is not necessarily necessary. And the idea that there's a lack of 20,000 square foot of commercial in Waxahachie Gross is fairly silly when you have all sorts of already permitted commercial on Southern Boulevard. Which I'm sitting there looking at it every day. It's still woods. There's a sign there for sale. Nobody seems to want to buy it, so it's not like they're, beating the path to the door. There was a recent sale over here on some commercial property that fell apart, and I know that over by me, there's two people who are going begging, trying to sell commercial property. So I don't think that we really have this all five need to do this. And that once we say, well, yeah, we're okay with what we've done, we're okay with adding more now, we're making activity centers and hubs and all this other stuff that just builds out. I would say nothing is better than something when that something involves another 20,000 straight out of the box, and creates a concept that we're gonna, whatever that math is that you referred to, just let's hire a mathematician to get involved in it, and pretty soon they'll figure out a way to say, oh yeah, based on that concept, we can have this. And you know what I'm saying? He had to go through a lawsuit to get to where we're at with Mr. Day. And I don't think that there's dominoes fixing to fall. I really don't. I mean, I could be wrong, but what we have churches, we have very limited, the shopping center out there, gallery fails constantly, nobody can stay there. It's not like there's a big economic need for this commercial. And if you're going to build, yeah, I might say I'd love to sell my property for somebody for commercial, but if I'm the commercial developer, I have to have a plan. I have to have a viable function on the property. And there's only so many Dunkin' Donuts there on the right-hand side as we go into town every day. You follow what I'm saying? So I think that rather than us get involved in all this big stuff, or going into planning and charrettes and spending all sorts of town money on what would be the future of Okeechobee, we had them. You know what? The people who have the land want to sell it, and the people who don't. And that's what we need to learn. We know that. It's pretty obvious. If you own land on Okeechobee, you'd like to maximize your potential profit. And if you're ordering that, you don't want that. I don't think that we need to.
Okay.
That's what I'm coming.
Jim, Brian?
Yeah. Let's go back and start with the premise of why we have this even on our table. Our town management is trying to be proactive. We're trying to shore up what poor language we have to limit commercial development, which is nobody's fault. It's just that's what we're stuck with. So let's try to do something to fix it. And the quicker we address doing something, the quicker we can try to put some control, because low impact non-residential has not protected us the way I think many of the council members would have liked. So we need something better than that. This gives us an opportunity to at least put some kind of a stake in the ground. I'd like to modify what we have in front of us. In summary, I'd like to modify what we have in front of us for basically take out the cottage industry concept, because I think it breeds nothing but problems. It creates a problem we don't have at this moment, and we have a problem that we're trying to address. We're trying to be focused on that problem, which is some kind of better limit that we can impose in terms of versus low impact non-residential. And the second thing is, I think we can pass the ordinance with that change, or any other change the council members would like to make, and immediately after that, adopt a motion for zoning in progress and moratorium. You can do that also. which will accomplish, I think, what Ron Gerald was pointing out. We can do that with the approval, move this along at first reading, and I'd like to send it back to P and Z based on their 5-0 vote. The items that they addressed, I'd like them to focus on 4 of them as to, again, what we're trying to accomplish, I think, is somewhat limited. What I saw come out of the P and Z meeting had some, I guess, ideas that were much bigger than what I think we're trying to accomplish. We got kind of a narrow problem, but we can define it, we can fence it, we can address it, we can put something in place, we can give the P and Z folks an opportunity to go back and specifically from their list of 8 items, I'd like them to focus on this maximum square footage of commercial allowed, but also, and more specifically, and they say more specific definition, types of commercial allowed. I think that's probably a key item that we can add to this going forward. Bill shared a little bit of a story with me about Stewart and how they have kind of a professional enclave. They get a lot of tax money from professionals that pretty much have a 9-to-5 business. They go home, and it's not a 24-hour type of thing. It's not 7-Eleven, and the residents get the benefit of that. But anyway, that might be something that considered under commercial allowed, the types. And the other item 5 they had on their list include more specific definition of terms. Absolutely, if they can go and add to that. And then further refine the concept of activity center. Those 4 items that are their list of 8, I think, are more narrow to the item, and more specific to what we're trying to do. And we don't really need at this time to expand it to a vision of Okeechobee Boulevard. I think they're trying to give us some kind of a defendable limit on commercial development. We can do that, we can pass this, we can take out. My concern is the cottage industry, take that out for now. If we want to address it another time with something else, fine. Because I think it causes a problem within the town that we don't have in this point until we add this. So let's focus on addressing what I think we have as a problem, only that. Move it forward, get P&Z to come back with these items addressed, give us back, something with those things better qualified, better defined, and let us have an opportunity. But it would require 2 motions. 1 to approve this with changes, and 2 to do a zoning in progress moratorium grant for 6 months or 80 days.
Now, wouldn't we kind of accomplish the same thing by just going with the motion that they had crafted, that first one? Basically to table it and just put the moratorium on it?
Well, not necessarily, because we have an opportunity as a council to give you some feedback. I mean, if we kick this around individually, and if we found any things in here that we really didn't, like, or think it's really not accomplishing what we're trying to accomplish, which again is, I think it's a very narrow problem that we're trying to focus on. It happens to be a big headache, but it's a narrow pinpoint kind of thing I think we can address. If we pass the ordinance, it doesn't say it's final. We give some feedback, some direction to the team that would say, all right, we've got a 90-day or a 180-day moratorium. Let's make sure we get it done. Let's focus what you do, and let's stay with the 4 items out of the 8, for example. And let's just get it back to us with those changes, and then we can discuss it and do the final approval within 180 days. I think if we go to maybe the items that are on the list, it's quite a couple of them very extensive. I think in my mind, I think we may be back asking for another moratorium. I'd like to get it done. Famous person that I think a lot of is let's get her done. That's what we ought to do, and we have a difficult time sometimes doing that because of many reasons.
Okay, Ryan, anything to add?
Well, I think between the two options we have, one common point is we will be going through a zoning and move progress. So I think we can go ahead and get a motion for that zoning in progress, and then we can discuss further on which direction we're going to go. I do think that this is something we've been kicking down the road for a while. What are we going to do with Okeechobee? And even though Tom may be correct that there isn't a line at the office looking to develop on Okeechobee, but we do know what's ahead of us. And I think it'd be prudent for us to think about that and try to be a little ahead of that before it bites us in the you-know-where. So I do think we do need to move forward on this sooner than later. The direction, I'm not entirely sure with yet. I do see a lot of the points that the planning board has made. I think those are a lot of things that we do need to talk about. Like for instance, the one about the development rights. Well, what if one property owner on Southern decides they want to buy up all the development rights on Okeechobee? Are we going to allow them to do 3.0? So we've got to talk about that. How are those development rights going to be implemented within the town? Those are just a few of the questions we'll have as far as how we're going to move forward on this. But I think that the one thing that we can agree on is that we are going to have to implement it as a zoning in progress and then decide from there which way we're going to go.
Okay, Tom?
To Jim's first point, if there is a existing flaw, for lack of a better word, within the comprehensive plan, my suggestion would be to make that change. If the words low impact commercial exist, let's remove it. Let's just remove that. Then that's not there, and that's what someone's hung their hat on in order to achieve commercial, then fine. That's my point to that. Let's look more to where the problems are, like Jim's trying to say. Where do we feel that the comp plan leaves us exposed? And show me those 10 words or 38 words or whatever that happens to be, and maybe legal could address that rather than this ordinance. Maybe we could go, as Brian said, with the moratorium or zoning in progress, whatever. They could address the actual specifics within the comp plan that have us vulnerable. That's one thing. And the other thing on the whole concept of transfer development rights, which we're starting to get far afield, that's assuming that you have them.
Yeah.
And, nobody has commercial development rights on, as soon as we start that, we're saying, what, somebody that lives way out on X Road, way out yonder, they've got some inherent development right, inherent, ability to build a resort casino? No, you don't. So we have to keep that in mind, and we have to realize that things have to be reasonable. And, as this brought out, fairly debatable, and keep that aspect of things in mind. Perhaps our deliberations could have put us in a better position with this particular situation. With that aside, and that water under the bridge, what I'm saying is, if there are things that are concerns, and I agree with Jim, and I've heard this thing about the low impact commercial and blah, 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 this leaves us, maybe we're not as safe as we think on Okeechobee. Well, then let's change that so we can be direct instead of creating new entitlements and new concepts and fantasies and nodes and all this other stuff that are really just planning jargon to me and not a lot of reality. If somebody brings a specific project, when Big Dog Ranch came, we told them to go to the gym. Now when they come back and say, hey, I'm not a joke, we're not going to be able to say, hey, you gotta go somewhere else. Okay, so, but, maybe if nothing else, we want to have P&Z look at that list of what we think is okay on the Okeechobee bid. Retail commercial is not one of those things.
Right, no, and I'm agreeing.
Or if it's going to be, maybe it's going to be a 2,000 square foot building or a 3,000 square foot building, so it stays a Dunkin' Donuts or a drive through something small versus expand and expand.
One of the things, and I was surprised when we went through the thing with Mr. Day, I was surprised that we didn't have in our plan anything less than a 0.1. The commercial low of the lowest intensity. You're right, that low impact non-residential is a carryover from when we did our neighborhood plan, and the county said you have to give something along the Okeechobee, and then we carried that into our first comp plan, thinking, okay, we can make it very low impact non-residential, and when we found out that all we had was a 0.1, then that's what really bothered me about that whole thing, because that's such a high density that makes it very profitable for a person to build. So, my thought is the more hurdles we can put up, even though I'm not for approving. And one of the promises promises I made to the residents of Okeechobee was, if you can come up with something, come to us, we'll consider it, you know, and my, you know, my idea is not commercial, you know, high impact, something that's gonna bother. Maybe some offices that look like homes in a very small FAR would give us tax money at the same time, not impact us more than another. So anyway, that's a thought. I think this is just another tool that maybe becomes another hurdle. My fear is that there was a little bit of potential establishment of a right to commercial way back when Okeechobee was first paved, and people were trading land 2 for 1, and you know, they built the Red Barn and, you know, some other things. So that's what I think we're fighting, is that it even goes back before we were a town. So
Well, I don't land on Okeechobee before we were a town, and there was definitely always people saying, oh, this will be something someday. But
Right.
it was never something that I took to heart.
right,
It was it didn't happen.
sure.
You know?
No, I know. But a lot of people thought it was. I mean, we
Yeah.
both know. All right.
One other question.
Yes.
If I may, staff is prepared, they're familiar with the issues we've had, they're familiar with the Dayton property experience. They proposed this as, I believe, an attempt to give us something that's a whole lot better than what we have now residential. I guess I just have a little more input from Bill as to why he chose. The information I have gotten from him, I'm comfortable that this is something that we can put in place and give us the mechanism to limit commercial along Oakey. And I don't want to repeat necessarily what he said to me, but I'd rather hear it again. And he probably said it to everybody, but we need a defendable position. This seemed to establish that. We know point 1 was not what we wanted. This seems to at least address that also. I don't think it's an easy process, as easy as getting an ordinance done, as it would be to change, just eliminate low impact non-residential, or put something else in there, because I don't know if there's not anything else you can do except this, but you put it in so many words. If we can do this through an ordinance, we can do it pretty easily, which is why I recommend. But I'd like to hear maybe if Bill could reiterate why he knows the problem, why he chose necessarily this makeup along with Jim Flushing, obviously.
I will try. Basically, as I recollect, the town engaged a firm to study both Southern Boulevard and Okeechobee at the same time, simultaneously, and went through a lot of public hearings, pro and con, relative to how the development may or may not occur, if ever, whenever. The result of that study is what this ordinance and what the exhibit was, what Jim gleaned from those meetings. I think we've expressed that you have the pro developers that want to do something on Okeechobee, you have everybody off of Okeechobee don't want anything. And not anything quite in between. And so what I think Jim tried to provide to you and the town is a medium, a happy medium somewhere. There was a lot of discussion at the P&Z and the LPA regarding they wanted more detail on how the numbers were actually developed, etc. And I understand all that, and I'm all for it. The concept was put something in place. I also understand Councilman Goldson's position. If you don't change it, well, then you're right where you're at. I would encourage that the town council take an action. If you do take the action where you adopt the ordinance, then after 180 days after approval.
What happens is, if you adopt the ordinance on first reading, it's transmitted to the Department of Economic Opportunity, DEO, right? And they review it, and the review by the state is much narrower now than it was 5 years ago. It sends it back to the town, and the town will have 6 months then to adopt it. This first reading is to transmit it to other agencies to have that review and feedback. So that will be done if you adopt it on first reading. Doesn't mean that you can't continue to review it, it just means that that's a step that's different than if you just table it, that's all.
Now, if I understand, if they do nothing, it becomes adopted.
Well, once it gets back from the state, and the comments are made, say they find it in compliance and whatever, you have 180 days to act, and I believe by default, if we don't do anything, but I would assume that once it comes back from the state, council will take it up immediately and decide whether to adopt it. But I don't know what the time frame is to get back anything from DEO. I don't know if they have a short term. Do you know if they have a short term? I don't know what kind of turnaround time they would have.
At the same time, if we go with the motion to table it, give us the comparison. If we don't send it up to the Department of
We do
Economic.
not send it up. It does strengthen the council's position relative to somebody coming in because you're going to table it. You're taking a positive action. Here's the ordinance before you to do something. You're going to do the zoning progress and come back at the next meeting with the first reading of an ordinance.
Well, so that's go to planning and zoning.
P and Z, and then back
Back to you.
for the moratorium.
Okay, so we have a plan in progress, so there can't be an application.
If you adopt a motion to announce the zoning in progress to adopt the moratorium, that's the first step. Then that puts the time out while we go and get the moratorium in
Okay,
place.
and then we could go either way with these
That's
two
correct.
motions.
Either, so if you want to give us that direction first, you can do that while you debate whether to adopt, table, or take other action on the ordinance. That's up to you. We're asking for that either way.
Right.
Question, we transmit, doesn't mean we can't change what we have for fun.
You can change it tremendously, but what it does, it forces the council and the LPA's hand that you have to take some action within the specified timeline. So you're gonna have to take and tear it up, chew it up, spit it up, do whatever it is you wanna do with the exhibit and the comp plan. Get that done and get it done within, I would say, 4 months.
Yeah,
So that there's time to come back to you for,
a DEO review and whatnot. We would want to, if you don't transmit this, or you make changes and retransmit, for example, you want to get that done within the next 90 to 120 days to give yourself time within the moratorium period to get state review and then come back for the adoption.
Well, and in the past, we've extended moratoriums. So, I mean, it's not like it's
You
locked.
can, and if you've got active documented steps that you're doing something along the way, it's justified to do it.
I mean, my thought is,
But we want to get it done
Right.
sooner than later.
my thought is that if we don't have anything done, you're right now, they're maybe looking at, well, maybe I got a chance of trying to get a .1, where if we started going and say, okay, it's not going to be that much available. I mean, sometimes that scares me a little bit. Okay, there's only 19,000 square feet left. Now you've got a foot race to try to get your project in first. So, I mean,
And
But yeah,
and the thing is,
No, I know.
whatever shaky ground we're on relative to Mr. Day, we're on with everybody else.
well,
So the 19 is just a number.
no, I understand.
It could
I
fall
understand.
apart and it
Sure.
could be 190, just
Sure.
track.
No, I agree.
And the other thing, we are lower than .1 because Bill Day got less. So we are moving in the right direction. We've actually shown positive
Yeah.
affirmative steps towards reducing
But
that.
part of his lawsuit was that if anybody wins higher density, he gets that. No, I mean, but that was part of that
Something
agreement.
we have control of.
Then, yeah, okay. I want to hear from Dennis and Grace, and then we'll Grace, what?
Grace Joyce, I'm going to speak as a LPA member, if that's okay, first, and then as a resident. First, if I could, as a planner for the past 18 years, if I could just clarify the difference between a zoning in progress and a moratorium, because there is a difference, and you guys keep using them as if they're the same thing, or you have to do one before the other. But just so that everyone knows, the zoning in progress means that you're allowing people, you're telling the public, we're going to be changing some things, but you could still bring in your applications as long as they're going to be consistent with what our changes are going to be. We're letting you know ahead of time, these are the things we're thinking about changing. You can bring in your applications as long as they're going to be consistent, and we'll review them. We're not going to approve them, but we'll look at them. A moratorium means nothing comes in, everything stops. So I don't think we're in a position with this ordinance to do a zoning in progress. My personal opinion as an LPA member and a planner, I do not think that this ordinance is ready. I happen to agree with Councilmember Goldstein in what he's saying as far as future applications coming in. I do think that we are protected. I do think the Day property was a unique situation for the reasons that the LPA approved it, for the reasons that, you know, Mr. Fleischman approved it, for the reasons that you guys eventually approved it. But I also agree with Councilman Rocket. We do have to protect ourselves because there is going to be the next guy who comes in with that reason that we did not think of. And they are going to find the loophole that there is in our comp plan. And I do think we have to protect ourselves. But to pass this ordinance, which is not ready, I think the way that we handled this tonight is not to the benefit of everyone sitting in this audience. They didn't get to see the presentation that we got to see. I don't know if they got to read the document that you have before you with the recommendations that the LPA made. So they're at a disadvantage. No one has any idea who didn't see all the information that we got to see what we're talking about tonight. So if you pass this, I don't think they've gotten the proper notice. I don't think it's fair to everyone in this audience. So I would caution you not to transmit this to the state because it's not ready. Number one. Number two, any changes we make are drastic changes. They're not little changes, so it's going to have to go back to the state. So we're not going to look like we know what we're doing to the state. We have to have defendable details. The details, the 49,000 square feet that Jim came up with, he based on a formula that was not made available to the LPA. So if someone comes in with that 19,000 square feet and they want to challenge it and say, wait a second, I want to do 25,000 square feet, here's why. You came up with this 19,000, well the formula I have says I can actually do 25,000 and here's why you should give it to me. We don't have those numbers. We don't have defendable details that we can send up to the state that says, here's why we should only do 49,000 square feet and this is solid information and you should give it to us. So I don't think we're quite there yet. I also think that, and I know, I have been in the town of Waxahachie Groves for 25 years. I do think there is some legitimate commercial that could go on Okeechobee Boulevard. I don't know that it's, I forget the term that is in the document, but town serving. We have 3,100 people in our town. I think we have enough town serving commercial on Okeechobee Boulevard. The reality is whatever commercial goes on Okeechobee Boulevard, the people driving by are the ones who are going to be served by it, which may not necessarily be a bad thing. It's going to increase our tax base, which again is not necessarily a bad thing. But we have to decide what those uses are. And in the document it says that the people who want to have the commercial have to do a market analysis. Maybe that should be our responsibility. Maybe the town should do the market study and say, okay, here's what the market can hold in our community. So these are the uses that we want. We dictate. We tell the developers, here's what the market is going to hold. These are the uses that we want. If you want to come to our town, this is what we're going to support along Okeechobee Boulevard. And that's it. You either come or you don't. And we're going to decide what's going to happen along the corridor. And it's going to happen. You got Minto West coming in. That's a lot of traffic that is going to come down Okeechobee Boulevard. And Okeechobee Boulevard is going to change, whether it's an additional 2 lanes or 4 lanes or whatever it is. Better to be prepared. And if that means to table this, so we sit down and have one more public hearing, one more where we get everyone in the room together and just talk about it, I think it's going to be a different conversation. I really do. People are more educated. I know at our last LPA meeting, we had one of our board members who was normally no, actually vote yes, and the rest of the board members all looked at him and said, wow. And he realized things are changing and we either have to stand together as a community and decide we're going to be the lesser of 2 evils and go forward together, or someone is gonna make that decision, the Day property, for us. So I would really, really hope that you would look at this and realize it's just not ready. The cottage industries, I agree. We don't want that on Okeechobee Boulevard. That's taking a residential property, making it commercial, without the commercial safety nets that should be in place. The other industry that he said where it's a mixed-use type thing, that might be okay. That might be okay. But this is just not ready yet. We're forcing something that should not be forced. There's nothing out there that's coming forward that you guys know of, that anybody else knows of. I think you need to let the community have one more shot at this, and let your volunteers, the people that you put in place to protect the community as far as planning goes, let us do our jobs.
So you're basically recommending that we table it, but vote for moratorium, but then table it?
Voting for the moratorium is really up to you guys. I mean, that starts the clock ticking tonight. I think if, am I right, Mike?
Well, yeah, I mean, it puts it in place tonight.
Yeah.
As you're directing us to now implement it through an ordinance. The ordinance will provide, what I was thinking would be approximately 6 months from tonight, so the end of May, give or take.
So, that's entirely up to you. The LPA board was hoping that, a zoning in progress or a moratorium, either way, would be put into place. But you really need to have a strategy. I was hoping Jim was going to be here tonight. I did not know he was not going to be here. The LPA was thinking a strategy was going to be presented tonight as here are the actions that should be taking place in order to move forward. Because we're here right now with two options with no strategy.
Right.
If you pick option A, there's no strategy. What do we do now? Okay? We put a moratorium in place that gives us 6 months to now do what? So again, we're running around in that circle with our foot.
Okay, no, and I agree. So basically, what you're suggesting is table.
I would suggest that you table it and then come up with a strategy, direct staff to come up with a timeline of what needs to be done. I think it's too soon for a moratorium. I really don't think you're gonna have someone running into town council trying to get their property rezoned. I do think there are properties that have been rezoned in the past that should not have been along Southern Boulevard. I don't think that there are folks out there who are gonna have the luxury of having that happen to them on Okeechobee Boulevard.
Okay. Now, is there something that locks us in with 6 month moratorium? We could do
No,
a
I
9 month?
just seen, my research shows that's like the reasonable period. Of course, we've looked at moratoriums and lengths and whatnot. 6 months tends to be a dependable, reasonable time for an initial moratorium, which can be extended so long as you show the work during those 6 months has been moving towards something. So that's why.
Unless there's a big project that you're all worried about. If somebody shows up with a big project and it becomes critical, we can then impose the moratorium.
Well,
If they get in on your
Well,
comment,
they get
it's
in.
different than zoning.
Yeah.
So
Then you start to fight, but you say we're gonna give you the same as Bill Day.
Well, that's the thing. Once you set the standard for Bill Day, you can. I mean, you set a standard. But again, that's the one thing that I've said in the past. Every piece of property is different. Just because Bill Day got it, there were certain standards and things in the comp plan that he had to be consistent with. That doesn't mean the property on the north side meets the same requirement.
And I agree.
Or any other, so. it's
Or any other.
Or the other one on Folsom that's just
To the south of it,
Yes.
correct.
Yeah, but at the same point, that's gonna be the benchmark for anybody after him. So we do have to consider.
Well, then we've knocked it down 25% if that's the benchmark versus people gonna come and try to get higher than that.
Right, well, and really that was a negotiation because in my heart, I didn't want anything higher than a .05 anywhere on Okeechobee because I felt that that would limit the profitability of any commercial along there. And it would also give us less footprint, more reflective of our home sites and what we live out here for. So that was kind of my thing, and I was pushing it because I really thought that there was going to be some pressure from the developers. Maybe I'm leery, but, I would rather be on the safe side and get something in there.
Well, keep in mind, I'm not saying, I do think there needs to be an Okeechobee corridor plan. There absolutely, definitely does need to be a plan, but I don't think it needs to be one that should be decided tonight, just to get something on the
We're not
books.
ready tonight.
I agree.
I don't think
agree.
that this plan is ready. This is not going to protect us in the long run. I really don't think that it is. I mean, it's a good start, it's getting people talking, but I don't think it's the right plan.
We could have the P&Z have just a session where they brainstorm and talk about Okeechobee.
We asked for that, by the way. We asked for that to happen. We were willing to hold a special meeting to sit down and just talk about that. But I think it,
Maybe look at the comp plan and discuss these issues that Jim feels are in there. that
and
are-
he's
that
right.
are- well,
He's
then let's-
absolutely
then
right.
let's circle them.
And
Let's highlight those and
Yeah.
say, let's change this word, that word, what do we need to do to take specific actions in our comp plan? Because no matter what we do here with this, all those words are still gonna be in the comp plan, and they're gonna say, look, your comp plan's inconsistent with what you're saying now, so we claim this one, we like it.
That's right.
So we need to get consistency.
That's right.
We need to look at the comp plan, we need to start from the base document and move up,
Mhm.
versus just keep on piling more. It's like when you're re-roofing your house, you just keep roofing the house and you're just covering up patch and holes and stuff.
That's
It'd be
right.
better to tear it off and do it from the start again.
Right.
And so that's what we need to do with the comp plan, giving them the opportunity to give us that input, I think is our smartest next move.
Okay. And I understand what you're saying. And like I say, I have been one of them that have been pushing Bill to get something in there. Because I really thought with what is happening in the county, and there is a push right now by developers and they're hungry. And, I think there's some things that are good for us at Minto for all that I don't like about it. They've got to somehow make 2 million square feet of non-residential work out there.
Well, that's gonna help us.
I know,
So,
that's what I'm saying.
that's good for us.
That's gonna help us.
Yes.
The other side of it though is I don't know that the 49,000 square feet is defendable, because I think somebody will take the population of Royal Palm Beach and the amount of commercial that Royal Palm Beach has.
They do a 1, 3, 5, mile radius, and that's how they determine whether or not that's how they do market studies.
Sure.
So, and depending on where the property is within the town of Loxahatchee Groves, the population map is going to be different.
I agree.
So-
I agree.
Yeah.
All right.
That's why it might be a good idea if we do our own.
Okay. Dennis? Now, right now, we're in good shape, but we do not have a motion on the floor. So by consensus, we could just,
We can make a motion to do it.
well, we'd love a motion.
You don't have a motion yet, we'll get a new motion.
We could make a motion to table it, or we could just not make a motion. Dennis?
Dennis Litt, 13402 North Road. Speaking to you as the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Board. We had a good meeting. I questioned Jim on his numbers, and he gave me an answer that was sort of like when I was sitting on the planning commission for the county and asked Minto how they come up with their numbers, and they use the same fuzzy math. One thing I would ask staff to do in the future is if Mr. Fleischman or anyone's going to have a presentation, please be sure that the board gets the information. Because we had two things that night that were very awkward. It's like, can you vote on this? Vote on one. I didn't get anything in my packet about tonight's vote. So we need to be sure to take care of it. Anyway, the reason I asked Grace to go first is because she's very knowledgeable on the subject. When I was sitting on the dais and we had moratoriums come up, we had it for a year. I would recommend that we go off for a year on the moratorium on Okeechobee. I really don't see any reason why we don't do that. Because that gives us the time, as opposed to maybe 3 or 4 meetings to hammer this thing out. It gives us until, 2016 essentially to get it done. And we will get it done. I think we've had enough charrettes and we've had enough people getting together and spent enough money on pizza and speakers and everything else. Not much has changed. I don't think our population has doubled. I know it hasn't. And so I think we have enough background data. One of my favorite ones was sitting out at the school where the guy had all the pictures moving, push buttons on a little transmitter and register our votes. That was a good vision session. So I recommend that maybe we look at, getting the moratorium started tonight, and then have an effective date of, as soon as possible, because that then gives us cover, and make it for a year. So the Planning and Zoning Board, LPA, can do its work, come back to you with some good, solid information, and a plan to move forward. The thing that bothers me is that we got that 0.74 for the Day property, and if anybody gets any higher than that, they can then use those little spots that he has on his site plan to build more buildings. And I agree with the mayor, 0.05, I think 0.04, maybe more appropriate. And as far as the point that Brian brought up about transfer development rights, yeah, they can transfer their development rights of one home for 5 acres to somebody on Southern Boulevard. When we do this and have a sector plan done for Okeechobee, just because we say that the commercial can be this, doesn't mean that all those properties on Okeechobee can. They don't. They've got to come in and go through the whole process of getting their land use changed and then getting the appropriate zoning for that spot. Just because we have, this sector plan done for Okeechobee or corridor study or whatever you want to call it, but we know what we need to do. It's not like we have 1 foot with a nail in and running in circles. We know what we need to do. It's just that we've been procrastinating since I was on the town council. We had a lot of meetings, but we didn't really know anything there. So my recommendation is that we do a 1-year moratorium, and then we have time to get things done.
Thank you, Dennis. All right, what's your pleasure? We don't have a motion right now on the floor, so we can do whatever we want.
I'd say we got a consensus at the table and not make a motion at all.
Okay, so, well, you table a motion, so if we don't have a motion, we just, move on from it, right?
My consensus would be move on to item 70.
Okay.
I think we need to make a moratorium.
Well,
And that's part of this.
all right, Mike, give me a,
Here's the thing, the 2 recommendations.
This is a moratorium on commercial on Okeechobee.
right,
The moratorium would
So
be
it doesn't
for,
affect churches, people building houses on
No, all those are
Okeechobee, and all those other things,
Ag.
things like that are going on.
right.
well, I was gonna say, you give us the direction of the scope of the moratorium as well, because the moratorium that's proposed in your motion was for any land use, future land use changes. So
Land
you
use
do not
changes.
want it to be that broad, then you just direct us what you want the scope. And of course, the narrower the moratorium, the better, obviously, because then you're not casting a wider net than you need for what you're trying to
So we
accomplish.
can have
Talking about commercial retail.
Moratorium on commercial retail.
You could say a moratorium on the processing of future land use map and text amendments. A moratorium on the process of approval of future land use map amendments for commercial uses, for example. And then that way, if someone comes in and wants to do a land use map amendment to do institutional or something like that, they can still go through the process. But if someone wants to come in and change the CL, you'd say, sorry, no, we've got a moratorium for commercial land use. So you can narrow it that way.
Everybody all right with that?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to that effect. I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion to that effect for 1 year, Jim?
Well, no, the question then is whether I go with the advice of council that said a reasonable number based on what his experience is, what he would suggest is 1 year, is 6 months. I don't see why we can't get something back in 4 months and get us to act on something. So I don't want to make it a year because it kind of automatically puts it into, well, we'll do it next year, at the end of next year somehow. Let's get it, a little bit of fire built under it, leave us going.
Yeah, you can extend it by another ordinance, which if you did a moratorium that goes till May 31st. Part of that I would take is you would also direct staff to give you an update report no later than the first meeting in, say, March, correct. And then from that, you could provide direction, yes, move forward, and extend the moratorium appropriately.
So if we were making progress, but we're quite there yet, we can extend the moratorium.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think, I mean, all due respect to Mr. Lipp, I just think if you go a year and then, human nature is, fires and whatnot, you might not start the process till June or July. And I think it's important with the history that towns had with reviewing development of Okeechobee having moved.
So my motion would be for 6 months.
Okay, Brian, you're all right with that? All right, we have a motion and a second for a 6-month moratorium on commercial. Any other?
Along
On
Okeechobee
Okeechobee.
only, right?
Yes, right. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0.
Now, Mr. Mayor, we had an opportunity to go through this. I presume the council members.
Yeah, let's take a quick break, correction, and,
The council, need a break.
and then mark that. I know. Go ahead.
I'm gonna sit down here.
Hey, no, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Generally, it's 3. Generally, it's
What you could have done last year. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't quite miss that.
You what? You what? Yeah.
Wasn't even catching that.
Someone said that someone was at town hall.
What about?
They wanted
Yeah.
to.
That's all easy. He said, oh, no.
They mentioned. Yeah.
That was the big thing.
Oh, it sounds.
The reason they did that.
Hopefully they're like, yeah.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Actually, when I came into oh, they're trying to do assisted living for assisted living. It's nice and quiet. Oh, too.
Thank goodness.
That's a lot.
Everybody back in your seats?
everybody, we have Ryan outside. Dominic, would you ask Ryan to get in?
Okay, moving to 7B.
I think we, a certain agreement on, we need something in place, what we have not sufficient. I believe I heard similar things in that we need something that's defensive, it just can't be a number plugged out of here. You've got to have something that has some basis that we can defend when we say this is our limit, and we're able to defend it based on something. So we had that, the attempt by Jimmy to give us something there. We also have to establish some kind of a 0.5 type number. I'm even more aggressive than Dennis is. I'd like to be closer to 0.03 rather than 0.04, but even lower than that would be fine with me too. So anyway, we know those are the issues we're trying to address. One thing that I would like to get the council's reaction on is I don't know that I want to waste the time of P&Z on cottage industries. I don't think that's something that we want to include in what we're trying to narrow. We look at a problem. We don't need to introduce, I think, this cottage industry concept into what we're trying to work up for us. You know, the staff gave us, they've started the ball, whether the ball was square or not, started it. And that's the important thing. We need to move forward, so get in the beginning. But I don't think cottage industry is something that I think is going to fly. I just see it makes too many problems for the town if you do anything, if you include that. So if they're going to look at it, I think they'd be wasting their time.
It's okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Tom?
I don't think we should deal with it at all. I think, like I said, we should see where those problems are that everybody is alluding to, but yet can't say which paragraph, which sentence is the issue. You tell me which sentence is the issue, we can change the word. And we'll send the comp plan, we'll fix the comp plan, and won't get hurt anything. Like I said, this is such a conglomeration of, you know, once again, it's camel horse designed by a committee. It's what he thought everybody said, and well, you can't make that into something, that's why you have a vote on it. It can't always be the conglomeration of everything. So I think that starting from scratch with the comp plan, where's the problems, that's what we really are trying to do. Take out the illusion to commercial and infrastructure, say we've reached the maximum now, we're done.
Okay, that's good. All right, 7B.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, but have we given any direction to P&Z at all? Have we telling them what to do? What
Yeah,
we want them to do, or?
I think right now, we're gonna let them kind of hammer that out here first tonight. And, I mean, if it means go back to the comp plan and say, you know what, we've got enough with what we have with Southern and what we already have, maybe we have enough. So, but leave that for you guys. One of the things the county used to tell us, and that was before we were a town, and I know that, but they used to say, well, you can't tell somebody just absolutely no. They have the ability to come. One of the things the only thing I don't like doing is I really don't want to give them a list of saying, well, these are the things that we might entertain. Because I found that what they do is they come back and compare it right back to you exactly.
Exactly what you said.
Yeah, exactly what I said. I mean, I've heard a bunch of times, our first council talked about, well, we would entertain a gun range down on Southern Boulevard. That was before Shoot for Straight. That was back when we were not allowed to shoot in Waxahachie Groves. And every guy since then has come to me, well, we'll put in a shooting range. But if you're making happy, yeah. So anyway, right forever. All right. Yeah. All right, moving to 7B.
Mayor and Council, this item is being brought forward relative to three items that the Council brought up. Putting on a referendum vote for the March 10th election. This item was drafted by the attorney relative specifically to revenue bonds. As you're aware, the town can currently borrow money for up to 36 months. 35 months and 29 days. And as long as you pay it back in that period of time. What the intent of this ordinance and this vote is asking the citizens, in effect, can the 36-month or 35 and 29-day month be extended to a longer term, 30 years or longer? And that's the structure of the vote. The attorney can address specifics of that if you have a particular question on the language. In page 77 of 108, he actually specifies the language, and I think I probably steered you all wrong. I thought it was 175 words. It is, I was corrected, it's only 75 words. That can go on a reference.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we pass ordinance number 2014-09.
Okay, with the motion, a second.
I'll second.
Okay, second by Ron.
Read the title.
Yes, go ahead.
In ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Oxford Groves, Florida, submitting a referendum amendment to the charter of the Town of Oxford Groves, to amend section 6 entitled Budget and Appropriations. The lease subsection 6 entitled Revenue Bonds, Lease Purchase Contracts, that would remove the requirement that certain type of borrowing and exceed repayment term of 36 months be approved by referendum election, providing for ballot title and summary, providing for notice to be published in accordance with the State of Florida Election Code, providing for this ordinance when adopted shall be submitted to the qualified electors of the Town of Oxford Groves. The special election of the town's general municipal election on March 10, 2015, and placed on the election ballot for said election, and shall become effective as provided by law, providing for suitability, inclusion in the town charter and code, providing for conflicts, and providing for the effective date.
Okay, so we have a motion by Tom, a second, who made a second?
I did.
Second by Ron. Okay, discussion. Okay, Tom?
I support this because it gives us the flexibility to borrow money, and under the current situation at a very reasonable interest rate, if and when we have determined that a particular project is worthy of us spending the money on it and it exceeds the amount of money that it would be prudent for us to spend of our reserves. I have heard from people who say, aren't you proud of the fact that we are a town which is debt-free? And that is true. We are also a town with ditches and dirt roads and no potable water other than what comes out of the ground, no fire suppression systems, no infrastructure whatsoever other than electrical lines and halfway decent cable system, I suppose. I don't use it. But other than that, that's all we have. So there's many people who would like to see improvements. I'm not saying that I'm complaining about the way things are, but I know that there are many people who tell me that they would like to see things improved. And when 35, 40, 50 people sit here and say they want to see something, and we tell them, I'm sorry, we ain't got the money, because it wouldn't be fair to do it for you and not for somebody else, I would like at least the option to say, well, you know what, for this much money per acre, or for this much money per whatever, we could borrow the money, pay it back at this, we could pay it back at this rate by raising taxes or by pledging the gas tax or the cookie money or whatever we're going to do, and have the ability to do this. One of my greatest objections to the chamber was spending $400 and something thousand of existing cash. Today's money to pay for something that doesn't save us money until we get 20 years down the road. If you instead do a mortgage, then you are using current money to pay for current expenses. It makes that a more viable purchase in my mind. And it also enables us, if we so desire, and if one of the subsequent ordinances tonight is passed, and people see, or we see that the people really do want to see some infrastructural improvement, then we have that ability. And so that's why I support it. I do not support willy-nilly borrowing huge amounts of money and raising everybody's taxes, but when we have consensus, both as a town and as a council, that's why I support this. That's why I think.
So,
I just wanted, Councilman Go, I loved your argument. The only one thing I would like to correct, if I may, is you cannot do taxes relative to this ordinance. The only way that taxes can be used is the general obligation bond, which would still require a referendum of the town. So taxes is not in the mix.
Yeah, that's
Just wanted to
why
make
it leaves in there,
that point.
it clarifies that unless the referendum is required by state law. So say, if you're gonna do a GO bond, general obligation, and pledge a separate tax under tax bill for just those bonds, that would have to be voted on by people.
Even so, that would be the consensus that I was saying I would be.
But this would allow you to do a pledge to a budget or appropriate or another revenue bond or something like that.
Okay, any other discussion by council members?
Whatever we do, if we borrow money, somehow it comes out of somebody's pocket. The cost of borrowing that money. Whose pocket does it come out of? You tell me, we don't have to raise taxes, we can't raise taxes. We have a revenue bond, which, okay, how do you pay for the revenue bond?
Pledge a gas tax.
Yeah, that's one example, like larger, cities that have different revenues that are sufficient to pay like utilities or something. They pledge you revenue from water or whatever, or occupational tax revenues or some franchise fees.
Sales
You don't have a lot of those options, but what you may be able to do is, for example, the gas tax or a portion of the gas tax, or you get a favorable transaction where you can lease it for 48 months or something. Say you buy a piece of equipment and you can do it for 48 months as opposed to 36 months. Lease purchase for that equipment. Right now, you're limited to do a 36-month lease. It's just, that's all, but what doesn't change is state law. So it just, the restriction in the charter that would require a referendum beyond what state law requires.
Well, my concern is that if we start dedicating funds that we now fully use, that means something has to give somewhere else. So, roundabout, we're going to pay more taxes. But the other thing I object to is that we don't limit this. We say regardless of purpose or repayment terms. That seems very broad, and to me, we're taking something away from the community in that they have this restriction, they have this right to say, no, I don't want to do that. And so I'm not in favor of doing this, certainly not in favor of doing this kind of general comment about you do it for anything you want to do it for. And we can talk about you can't raise taxes for it, but you're going to end up, since we went through this exercise most recently, we're going to have to pay for it somehow, and we can pay for it out of other funds, or we can raise taxes because we don't have enough money to do things we had been able to do with the funds before we dedicated some. So I don't know if we can be more specific to what we say the purpose is, or just leave it very generic. I think we're entering into the domain of big cities, big debt, and higher taxes, which we've been fortunate, one of the few cities in the state to be in the position we're in. And I think we just take one of those safety nets and throw it away.
Okay, anybody else?
Finally, I have always been really big on low services, low taxes. But I keep getting flack from people who are telling me that's not what they want. And I keep hearing from people who say that's what they want, but then think that perhaps we might be able to do this, that, and the other, and not charge them. And that's the problem. We can't. And if you're gonna sit here and you wanna pave roads, you don't have to do revenue bond. We can say we're gonna assess everybody on this road and we're gonna do this road. But we have to get all the money from them right then, because we wouldn't have the ability to borrow, so we just collect more money from them. There's nothing that stops us from doing that now in the charter. We could raise the taxes any day we want, as we well know. So the issue to me is one of flexibility. We make the decisions. We decide if we're going to borrow the money, within the parameters of this, or if it's required to get a referendum for a particular general revenue bond, then so be it. That's the fallback, where people can decide. In any big project, that's probably how it's going to be. There's going to be a referendum specific to that project. So I'm not that worried about it. But if nobody wants anything, if people want to stop coming here and asking us to give them money, including Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and everybody, that's fine. But everybody has their hand out.
Okay, Bill?
If I could, Mayor, Councilman Rocket brought up a very good point. I think of purpose, I automatically think of lawful governmental purpose. Because that's all we're allowed, if we're gonna borrow money, we can only borrow it for a lawful, not any purpose. It's gotta be a lawful governmental purpose, which means it has to provide for the government.
So we could,
Yeah, but that's such a broad thing, you know, people take junkets to Argentina and call it lawful governmental purpose, so, you know.
I don't think we're borrowing money from the government.
If we like Chuck in Argentina, they have a good interest rate, you know, you never know.
well, that language could be.
Right, or the guys who go to Bermuda for the insurance.
We can refine that a little bit, because I think he was right. Purpose sounds like, well, that's anything. Let's go buy the place right down here on Southern Boulevard, the one you only about
Oh, yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Go buy that, but that's not really a lawful governmental purpose.
I agree. We spoke of it, double your age, but okay. Any other council members? I've got 3 public. Ron?
That definitely needs to be changed to lawful governmental purposes, because I had a few people call me, and that does sound careless regardless of the purpose.
I'll accept the change.
And what I believe is, I believe when the people vote on it, if they're not explained or educated to about the general obligation bonds, then they're probably going to vote no. So, and the people will vote. In other words, if the people vote no, then it doesn't happen. If we educate them and tell them that, hey, you're not going to be taxed without a referendum, then that's going to influence how they vote, I believe, and that's up to, notification and educating the people. So the people, they'll vote on what they think is best, so let's leave it up to the people.
What I was gonna suggest to change that sentence, is deleting this provision will permit the town to borrow funds for any lawful governmental purpose without a referendum unless a referendum is required by state law.
Okay.
Does that
And
work?
Tom's good with that, Ron's good with that. So, all right.
Mayor, one other thing, my concern is that we're asking for input from the community. We should opt for the best time to ask for that. I think if we do something in March, you get less turnout than you do in a November timeframe. We should put this on a November election time, because we then have more people coming to the polls. Not everybody necessarily going to answer these questions, but you have an opportunity to get more input than you do if you limit it to, if you put it in March.
I believe, Mr. Mayor, that there's a problem with local referendums on November elections. Am I correct?
I will have to back that up, because I talked to Susan Booker a while back, a couple weeks ago, and she was not in favor of us doing anything local on a November ballot.
Okay.
Crowds the ballot too much.
Okay. And of course, it might get more voters out for the March election too, so that might be a good thing.
Yeah, might be a big turnout.
Okay, Lung Chu, then we've got John Ryan and Tobin.
You can't do it, or she said she'd like to.
I'm gonna follow up on it to make sure that a referendum is not a problem or is a problem. We were just talking about municipal elections.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. Having to look at the ordinance that you have, I think it's very confusing and also misleading. What you have in here, with the changes that the council proposed, and also with the statement you said that this proposed amendment has no financial impact to the town, it's just the opposite. What it does is to give the authority of the council, 5 members here, to vote, to do anything you want, whatever terms you want, complete whatever amount you want. Remember the town charter was passed through a due process. Many citizens get involved, a lot of discussion. And this is part of the input, the result of the top input. I think if you just pass it tonight like this, and remember, we talked about this a few weeks ago, I think we are not doing a service for the citizen who passed the original charter. My suggestion is that if you want to undo it, we should at least get some input. And I'm not saying this is a bad idea. I agree with Councilman Goldsnake. we need flexibility. We need to improve infrastructure. But I don't want to give you a blank check. Do whatever you want. So I hope that you respect the founding fathers of the town. When they put the language together, and I think it deserves some input for more than just a handful of people here. Only 3 speakers. I can't speak for the town for any reason. But please, it's important that you want to do whatever you want, whatever terms you want. I think it's too much flexibility. We have been speaking here, doing business for 18 years in planning. I've been doing government marketing for the last 35 years. I found this a lot of problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Lon Chu. John Ryan.
Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Yes.
One thing. The town charter is a living document, not the Ten Commandments. And we should not be bound by some sort of trying to make into tradition that which has existed for 8 years. And it does involve the people, because it involves every single elector in this town gets to make this choice. And I know that I've been on the losing side several times when I've said, oh, let's let the people decide, and no one seems to want to let them decide about various issues that were extremely contentious. So, I think that this one, where we actually do allow the people to decide something, is probably a good thing. That's why I'm in favor of it. I like democracy, so I'd like to see this move forward.
Okay, John.
John Ryan, 3508 A Road. I do support the need for the town council to have the flexibility to borrow funds for projects. 2 things I'd comment on. I think it might be reasonable to consider requiring a supermajority vote of 4 rather than just a simple majority of 3. And that be a supermajority of the full council, you know. The other thing is that we do have in the charter the ultimate citizen right to deal with an ordinance by a petition calling for a referendum. I mean, if there was a really contentious project and the town council voted to do it even by a supermajority, 210 petitioners roughly could require a referendum. And that would be a legitimate use of that right of the citizens that's in the current town charter. I know this was not correctly used with reference to the college because it was a completely different situation that actually violated the state statute. But I think the right of the citizens to petition for a referendum if they felt that this, for whatever reason, that this project was not correct, we do have that protection. But I would recommend a supermajority vote for all 1.
Thank you, John. Bellarmino.
Voting again, 4245, 148 Churchill. I do agree with Tom that we do need the flexibility and have the ability to do projects that we have. However, just like the P&Z, what she was talking about, that it is rushed, it needs to be worked out properly. The citizens hasn't been talked about it. How many people know that we have this only? It need to be vetted out, we need to be talked about, so that when they do go to the polls, they know what they're voting. Rather than even here, how many people read it? You just thought, oh, we're going to change it. That sounds very good. Yes, we do need citizens, but the way it said it over there is not right. And John is correct. We do need flexibility. We would need supermajority. But to me, the most important thing is it's not ready. And just like the P&Z and everything else, yes, we need to be done. It needs to be referendum. It needs to be talked, but it needs to be talked about with a lot more people, not just few people. How many people actually know what was on that stuff? And it is very objectionable to say that you can do it for anything. You know, yeah, I was saying if I want to erect a fountain will look good, or a statue or somebody in the council may look good. You know, it's a legit council town use.
It's not like
So,
others.
yeah, or like, or tourists, or jungle, that's a town use. So, things like that, I think we need to be a little more tight. If this is regarding roads, I think we should say, we're going to raise money, we're going to do this for the roads. We need to tie that to the roads. This money is going to be used for the roads and nothing else, not for the journal or the statue or fountain. This is for the roads. I think we need to specify that. And yes, we need to tell them where their money is going to come from and how it's going to be done. We have to be specific rather than saying town use. What if we never get a road because other things come up? I think the road is an issue. Let's put it on a referendum. Let's tie the revenue. We're going to say we're going to have bonds or whatever we're going to do is for the roads. So people know, I'm voting it. If I want roads, I need the bonds. If you don't need it, you don't want the bonds, you won't get the roads. Simple as that. I think we need to be more specific. I'm having a general use like that. Yes, we do need money for flexibility. We absolutely do. But for other things and other things, what we have right now, if the road is on the referendum, the bond should be for the road, and that should be it, and not for any other thing else.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make the charter change that then enables us to say, we want to pay X revenue. We want to do a revenue bond. We want to charge you this much money. We don't even have the ability to do that right now. If I wanted to pay X road right now, I could not pay it unless I paid it with cash.
Sure.
So this is the initial change that then leads to that next.
This is a two-step process, of which each one will have to be voted on by referendum. So in other words, all this does would bring to the voters in March. So it's not something, no matter how we vote tonight,
Nothing changed.
this will not change until March. And the residents of Loxahatchee Groves, the voters of Loxahatchee Groves, will look at this as to whether to allow extending credit. I understand because I was on the first council. And I think originally we did it limiting because we didn't want to become like other towns and begin the process. So it was another hurdle to stop the town from, getting larger. But this is one step. If we decide we're going to need this first step to do those projects, then we have to get the first step going. Then we go to each one after that. Will all be by referendum. It's not like this council is going to sit up here and say, well, we're going to spend all this money. It's all going to be up to the voters. But anyway. Bill?
Just a point of clarification, if I may, Mayor. The only thing that would be required for a referendum after this, it would be the general obligation bond where you're going to provide for the taxing authority of the town on the citizens.
Okay.
That's the only one that would be required.
So if we were going to make a special taxing district to do a special project in that area of our town, we could do this on a longer, extended period of time.
Or townwide.
Yes.
What's that?
Or townwide.
Or townwide.
Or, but we could.
I just didn't want the
Okay,
information.
to work, everything would be by vote.
But we could, for example, get a mortgage for the chamber and pay for it out of general revenue and not have to go to. Right? Am I correct on that?
That's-
Well, a loan instrument may not be a mortgage, but a loan instrument to spread out the payments of the life of the
Yes.
building.
Okay. Ron?
So this is-
I do like the part about a supermajority vote. That kind of makes it a little bit harder for us to spend money. Now, could we work that in there?
Well-
Then the council may not agree.
Well, here's what the direction was at the last meeting, was to delete it. If you want to change it, then what I would ask you to do, if that's the direction, that's fine. I think we have time, is to give direction to revise it, and you're not deleting that, you're amending it to replace the referendum requirement with a supermajority requirement. Or you can adopt an ordinance after you pass this and take it out of the charter, and then you can pass an ordinance that would require supermajority to do debt. Once it's out of the charter, then you can handle how you want to do your debt by ordinance. But if you want to amend it and leave it in the charter, then it would be a different ordinance. This was to take it out of the
I'm okay
charter.
with leaving it like it is.
Yeah, I'm okay with leaving it like this, as long as we can change it.
Yeah,
Back to back.
yeah, you can adopt an ordinance say you take it out of the charter, you can adopt an ordinance that provides limitations on what you do. That ordinance would then be amendable like any other ordinance, but it would establish what you can do.
There's gonna be a pretty good period of time that the residents of Lock Century are gonna be able to look at this. It won't come before until March. So, and if they look at this without anybody explaining it, yeah, what's that?
Probably the time prior to this, right?
Yeah. So, but I'm saying that if it's not explained and understood, it won't pass. So anyway, I mean, that's the bottom
Mayor,
line.
the idea of, you can't build that into this ordinance?
Well, we're taking it out of the charter. So if you know, that's the whole referendum.
I understand, take it out of the charter, but we say that we have now that we're gonna lawful governmental purpose. We've added that, or modified our general purpose. You can't say by a vote of supermajority, vote only by the council.
Well, then again, what we'd be doing is okay, let's take a step back. Right now, this is taking it out of the charter, and then that would lead you to determine later on how to borrow money, okay? If you want to now say, you know what, we want to put a requirement of supermajority at this point, in this, the only way I see to do that is to not delete it, but amend it, which means you'll leave it in there and say, instead of saying without a referendum, it'll say, unless authorized by a 4/5 vote of the town council, you can do.
Or a referendum as required by law.
Right, so you would, instead of removing this provision from the charter, you would be amending it to replace the referendum requirement with a supermajority vote. And that would, I would suggest that that's the way the town council wants to go. I'd need to bring back another ordinance to you, I wouldn't be able to do that this evening, which you have time to do. It's just that you would have to get direction to do that.
I think in essence, it's just plucking that language out of the charter and creating an ordinance.
That allows us
That
to
addresses
borrow.
You'll be able to adopt an
And
ordinance.
you can make
passed.
it unanimous, it's gotta be unanimous vote, if you wish. But what happens is, once you get it out of the charter, then you're governed by statute until you adopt your own ordinance that sets forth the criteria that you're going to allow the public.
Okay, Rob?
Not only that, our elections in March, you may have 2 new council members up here, and so they deserve the right to decide whether majority vote and stuff like that. So that's another reason why we should wait on that.
All right, so quick clarification. So let's say 10 years down the road, none of us are on the council, or most of us are not on the council. There are you people here, and they decide we want to build, the king of equestrian parks, and it's going to cost $30 million. And so now they're going to vote with a supermajority to get the funding for the park. Technically, they would be allowed to do that under what we're proposing to do right now.
Unless it's a general revenue bond, then they would have to get that
Yeah, you would have to.
super park approved.
Right, unless it's a.
But if they don't need to get a super jet,
It's not a general revenue bond, but we would have to have the money to pay that 30 million, is the whole point. No one's gonna lend you the money if you don't
well,
have
it's
the money to
over,
pay that.
it's over a 30-year term, 30 million is still quite a bit, but it might be affordable for the town.
The revenue from that park.
Right.
I'm just saying, so that's theoretically possible.
Theoretically, that is possible.
Okay,
Good question.
It is.
well, with statues of all of us.
Yes.
Okay,
Can't wait to see it.
we have a motion, we have a second.
And that motion and second is to do it as amended with that, replacing the language inside the ballot question itself.
And the only reason I'm gonna vote for this is because it's gonna come before the residents of Lock Country in a referendum. And I'm gonna have to be convinced between now and then to vote for it. But I say we give them an opportunity. All right, all in favor? We need a roll call vote. And
Councilman Rocket,
No,
Councilman Liang,
No.
Mayor Browning,
yes.
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Yes.
and Councilman Goldstein.
Yes.
All right. Moving on to C, 7C.
The next one, Mayor, was also brought up by the council relative to roadway infrastructure improvements. It's really going to be, the way the attorney drafted it, it's a straw ballot to determine the capacity of the citizens and the desire for them to improve their roads in some fashion, whether it's OGM or some other fashion. With this, you will have a comprehensive understanding of the citizens' position relative to roads in general. And whether you need to then address a policy on how you're going to do roads to assist that. This does not say you're doing roads. It does not say anything about it other than you're getting a straw ballot by the citizens to indicate their desire to do a road or not.
This would be on March also?
It would be, sir.
All right. Tom?
To get it started, I propose that we approve this ordinance. So if I get a second, then I'll go on.
I'll second.
Okay, so should I read the title? In ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Lancaster, Coast, Florida, submitting to referendum a non-binding straw ballot relating to roadway improvement policies by the Town of Lancaster Coast, providing for ballot title and summary, providing for notice to be published in accordance with State of Florida election code, providing that this ordinance when adopted shall be submitted to the qualified electors of the Town of Lancaster Coast at a special election with the town's general municipal election on March 10, 2015, and placed on the election ballot for said election, providing for said voting conflict in the effective date.
I would like to add to it a second question, which is, would you support increased taxes to pay for this? So that, to Jim's point, people understand that nothing's free.
Okay, I was thinking that was already in there, but I agree, we've got to have something in there to say.
I mean, if people just, if the question is, do you want the road paved? Yeah, I want the road paved,
Well,
tomorrow,
yeah.
please come on and do it. But if you want me to pay for it, I'll have to sit back and think about that. You know, and I think that that's everybody is similar to that, other than a few people who are in the L&O category. But I think that the rest of them will take a conversation.
Okay, would we want it as a second question, or would we want it part of the first question?
And we were just discussing whether it would be the second ordinance.
I mean, I like it as a separate question, because it is, because actually that's very telling. If people say, sure, I want the road paved, but then they say, I don't want to pay for it, then you know where we're at.
Okay.
One of the things, Mayor, while you're on that subject, we need to point out that people would give up their right to choose whether they want to pay or not. That's one of the other things that you're talking about. You take it away from what we have now in terms of the process. If you get the vote, you get 50% of the people on that street get their pay.
And I don't think that's changing. This is just a straw ballot, basically to see where the community is on this.
I mean, the people who are saying that they want this done could just be louder than the majority that just says, hey, leave it alone. But there could be a majority of people who are really, really sick and tired of it. I mean, you and I both know a lot of people don't like all the speed bumps. There's people who are, even though they don't like them, they don't knock you in the head every day, but they're out there.
Right.
You know, so let's get an answer.
And we'll talk about speed bumps another day, but right now, one of the things you have is, part of what you're saying is the town pays the roads. And by the way, I don't know if we call it resurfacing, because you don't resurface a dirt road, you replace the surface or you add to it, but when you say that we are asking, do you want the town to pave these roads, then you also want the town to have, not ask you if you want them to be paved. It's almost like saying, you know, would you pay for these in additional taxes? And three, would you give up your right to say no for your particular road when the town overall has the right to do any road they choose? I think that's important, because if people understand they lose that right, then it may make a different, they may have a different perspective and a different opinion of what we're asking them to struck all the public.
I don't disagree with that, but that might be too confusing, because one aspect of it is we're not going to do any roads without the people signing an order, just like we did with Concord Bryan and ourselves. So I am not concerned about people being left over, and that they're going to have
Mayor and Council, over the last year or so, the FAAC has looked at a policy. And the design of this is to assist you in determining a policy that you want to set forth after you find out that some people do or some people don't.
It's not about
So and the FAAC has actually reviewed some various concepts and policies. I think there was even one or two that came to the council, but nothing has occurred relative to establishing that. This is just to assist you in determining a policy, whatever that policy is going to be, that you're not going to do anything, you're going to do everything. You're doing geo bonds, you're not doing geo bonds, you're doing paving, no, you're doing ODEM, no, you're doing chip seal, whatever that is. That's all it's designed for.
Okay, any other council member? Part of my thought all along, and I know that the old process worked, but then other areas it didn't work, all of a sudden B roads paid by somebody else, yada, yada. So, my thought is, I think everybody that's on an improved road needs to pay a little bit, and if a person decides they don't want the improvement, I think what we found is B Road chose not to have the improvement, and soon after they wanted the improvement, they just didn't want to pay for the improvement. And I think some of the people on Collecting Canal were the same way. They wanted the improvement, they just didn't want to pay for the improvement. I think some were ready to pay for the improvement. So, I think the straw vote would kind of get us an idea of where people are. John Ryan? And in Virginia?
Well, you say in there, this proposed amendment has no financial impact to the town. Potential certainly does. On a strong poll basis.
That's why the two questions.
Well, first I would recommend that it's not an amendment, it's a I gotta replace that word with non-binding ballot. It caught me when I was doing my wordsmithing on these questions. So,
It's not binding, so.
It'll be non-binding ballot. Okay, Joe?
It's just
Yeah.
John Ryan, 3508 A Road. I think you have to be pretty careful on that second wording, because I don't think you want to give the impression that it's going to be a town-wide tax on any road segment. I think Jim is correct in saying people out here, I think, want the right to determine if their road segment is going to be impacted. I think you want to be able to explain to them that there would probably be some combination of a unit of development and town sharing of the cost of the road. So I think you need to be careful, because you can kill something and people feel that they're going to be taxed, just like I'm going to be continuing to pay for scale assessment or acre assessment on A roads. I wouldn't particularly be in favor of increasing my taxes to pay for other road segments, until everything was folded into one. So I think to get across the idea that everybody ought to be paying something if they vote to have their road segment resurfaced or whatever, that's going to be a sharing probably between the town and the affected landowners. And if you've got to limit it to 75 words, I'd be pretty careful. But I'd get across the concept that it isn't free. It probably would be a policy that the town would adopt subsequent. They're just trying to get a general idea of people's desire for improved road surface.
Yeah, okay. In Virginia?
Virginia Spanish 15410 North Road, and I will comment on what you've been discussing tonight in general has been very vague and non-specific, and very convenient for the town council and the town. And you're right, the people would probably vote it down. You can educate us all we want, but we will research the facts, because we will educate ourselves. So whatever information you provide, please be specific and accurate. You refer to paving the road. This is an example. What are you offering? Are you offering OJA that doesn't even last 10 years? You need to be specific. What are you offering in infrastructure? What is the quality? Don't say, oh, here's a piece of candy, enjoy it. Okay, it's not the Christmas parade. The policy that is still in review and still needs to be reviewed has some things missing. like the fact that you can have non-ad valorem assessment and it needs to have acreage added to it. That is conveniently missing, and I will be bringing that up as the chairman at the next finance committee meeting. That will be added. Requests respectfully. All I can say is, you're vague, inconsistent, and what really concerns me is I heard the attorney mention something way back that I don't know if everyone's forgotten this. It was like 2 sentences, something about not requiring a referendum. There's 2 little sentences he mentioned, and I will go through the video and get the exact word, and you need to listen to what he's saying, because the people will. Thank you very much.
Okay. Ron?
We're taking something simple where we're just trying to get a straw vote to see if people want better roads in Loxahatchee Groves. Now, we've got to get a road policy that everybody agrees on. Keith has suggested there's other ways out there than Ojum that are better, that have come along in the last few years. So when you start saying we're going to do Ojum, you've got people that disagree with Ojum.
I didn't say I'm asking.
We're just making it complicated. We just need to know if the people want better roads in Loxahatchee. Now, there's a possibility everybody on E Road, South E Road, is going to vote no on this, but it's back to the people. And when we say that we're misleading the people, that somebody's going to have to pay for it, well, you know, I hate to say it, but the revenue we got coming into this town and the gas tax money that we've got coming in, you know, when you do something over a period of time, we probably got enough money without taxation of the people to do certain projects. And the road policy will help us determine the process people have to go through to get their road paved. So, you know, we just need to keep it simple. We need to find out, because we've had people tell us that people want dirt roads. I know Bill Lowder wants dirt roads. I know that for a fact. But we need to find out if the majority of people in Loxahatchee want better roads to travel on. And then we take it from there and we start figuring out how we can give them better roads and who gets the first road and all that. And that'll be determined by the people, not by the council.
I think the determining vote is going to be the second one. Are you willing to pay more money? And I agree with Virginia that they're vague. Are we going to come up with a number? Are we going to come up with, are you willing to pay $100 an acre a year? You know, and you know, to let them know what it's going to cost, because I think $385,000 a year sounds like a lot for gas tax, but it doesn't go very far when we begin to maintain these roads. I mean, any of us that drive down the roads, you realize the sides are breaking and crumbling, and you know, so it's going to take maintenance. And in the long run, I mean, you know, there were a few times on a couple of those, Compton and a couple others, that I thought it was cheaper to turn them back to dirt than it was to keep fixing them. But anyway, you know, that's just one of the issues we have, right?
Yeah, well, like Virginia brought up some good points that I think we do have to address. You know, obviously, I think the town should come up with its own road policy, not relying on the district, especially since we're supposed to be the ones ultimately owning and taking care of the roads. I do think we should have our own policy and also our own standards for our roads. I think once we come up with a general standard, what a Loxahatchee road is going to be, not necessarily a DOT road, but at least some type of standard that we can say, hey, this is what our road's supposed to be, and this is, and so we have a basis. Like for instance, right now we're having a little issue with the B Road and the college. I think if we had a policy and a standard in place, it would have made it a lot smoother. I think that's something we do have to talk about and discuss, so that way, if we decide to improve a road, the residents there knows exactly what they're getting. You know, right now, if we just say Ojum, we don't know how thick is the base rock, how thick is the Ojum, how long is it going to last. Those questions are important to anybody who's deciding or who's thinking about improving their road, especially since they've seen what's happened to some of our roads right now. They might think a second time about whether they want to approve it or not. But I think that's another issue for another day. This tonight's basically trying to figure out if the people in general are interested in improving their roads.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, you know, getting back, we can talk about whether to, and framing of a second question, because that's gonna have to come back at your next meeting. That's
Right.
separate ordinance and whatnot, we'll want some direction. This is intended, again, to ask the question and ask the council if they're comfortable with the way it asked the question. You know, so do you support surfacing of dirt roads within the town? That's the
Okay.
question.
All right, we have a motion and a second. No further public comments. All in favor, signal by roll call vote.
And just allow me to replace the word amendment with non-binding.
Roll call vote.
Councilman Liang,
Yes.
Mayor Browning,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Yes.
Councilman Golsonade,
Yes.
Councilman Rocket.
Yes.
All right, moving to 7D. Right, so we're at 7D.
This is the final of the three charter amendments that the council asked to be drafted. Basically, this one, I think, assists the town in section 7 of the charter, has all the criteria for the election located within it. As a result, what we're looking to do is take that language and move it into an ordinance. It's my understanding that a lot of, we're not moving everything relevant to elections into an ordinance, but the premise, the basis of the ordinance charter into an ordinance makes it easier to move change in the future as councils may deem necessary. It is not changing the terms, it's not changing the rotation or the qualifications, but the mechanisms by which the elections occur.
Okay. All right.
And Mike's drafted again, language for that.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we accept ordinance number 2014-11. Okay, Tom makes a motion.
Also,
Second by Ryan. Ryan, you want to read?
Yes, sir. An ordinance of the town council of the town of Waxahachie Gross, Florida, submitting to referendum an amendment to the charter of the town of Waxahachie Gross, section 7, entitled Elections, to remove section 7, which relates to election procedures from the charter, and convert them into an ordinance of the town of Waxahachie Gross, providing for a ballot title and summary, providing for notice to be published in accordance with state for election code, providing this ordinance, when adopted, shall be submitted to the qualified electors of the town of Waxahachie Gross in a special election with the town's general municipal election on March 10, 2015, and placed on the ballot for that election, and it shall become effective as provided by law, providing that should the amendment be approved by the electorate of the town, the election provisions of section 7 of the charter shall be an ordinance of the town of Waxahachie Gross, providing for severability, providing for inclusion in the town charter and code, providing for conflicts, providing for severability,
Okay.
providing for effectiveness.
All right. Discussion. All right, I've got nothing by the public. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Roll call. Roll call. So,
Mayor Browning,
yes.
Vice Mayor Gerald,
Yes.
Councilman Golsonade,
Yes.
Councilman Rocket,
Yes.
Councilman Liang.
yes.
Okay, now one of the things that I'm going to say right now is it's going to be very important that we educate and you know, inform our public what these three are doing on the ballot. Because if we're not, somebody's going to come in and just vote no. So, you know, we want them to look at each one individually and understand what they're doing and why we're doing it. And, you know, so that's going to be,
Our goal will be to provide the facts as we understand them. We're not going to be advocating one way or the other, but here are the facts.
and here's why we have these on there. Yeah. Okay. All right, did you want to say something?
I just had a question when we were talking about the road. One, do you want to just discuss that when we discuss the other items that Councilman Golson mentioned, or do you want to talk about that now, that second question relating to the roads? How do you want to address that? Because I would need direction to bring.
Yeah, let's talk about it right now, because we're on this one.
Okay.
What are your thoughts? How are we gonna put this thing forward where they, you know, it's gonna cost something? I mean, I agree, I think, oh, you
How
want
about,
to.
how about the question, if you agree with the proceeding, would you be willing to pay increased taxes for it? Leave that blank.
I think
When you were next to the first of all, we mixed the money.
If you say if you agree, that it would cause people to vote no, not to vote.
There'll be two separate.
Perhaps there'll be
Okay.
confusion.
Well, then, would you be in favor of paying increased taxes for road improvements?
Bill?
I would only provide guidance relative to taxes versus revenue. It could be revenue, like an assessment.
No, that's not the point. If it's assessment revenue, the point is, would you be willing to pay more money
More money.
out of your pocket versus I get it from Obama's highway grant?
And I thought that's
Okay?
right.
And everybody was probably glad to get it from the highway grant, but no one wants to take it out of their pocket. So my question is, do you want to come out of your pocket? Because I know you want me to give you a road for free. I know.
I understand. I just didn't know if you wanted specifically the word taxes in there because it's revenue generally.
Well, I think, people don't think town revenue, they don't relate that to money out of my pocket the same way as they relate the concept of taxes. So perhaps we want to say, would you be in favor of paying increased taxes or an assessment?
Assessment, taxes, assessments, or fees.
Whatever, taxes, assessment, or fees, whatever, to cover it. I think that is what we need to have in there to get if you're going to get to the point.
Ron?
I think to be fair though, you need to give them two choices. Are you in favor of paying taxes or are you in favor of paying it through revenues? In other words, there are other revenues in there because all I hear up here is that people have to be taxed for us to make progress in the town of Los Angeles. I don't believe that people have to be taxed. I believe with the commercial coming on Southern Boulevard, I think our future looks bright. I think we can do it with revenues without taxing the people. Now that's, and you know, over here is that, you know, if you want a decent road, you need to know that you're gonna have to pay for it. I think that's not a positive outlook now. I believe we can do it without people paying for it.
We're just here trying to,
Right, no, that's
what
fine.
it is that you
Well,
want.
I wanted to ask.
We're trying to formulate the question that you want.
And then it's going to come back to you, and you're going to have first reading of this ordinance with it phrased, but we're looking for direction on how to phrase the question.
If you ask if people are willing to pay for an increase, you're going to get an answer. If that answer is yes, fine. If that answer is no, then it is up to us to come up with a creative way that does not raise that in order to pay for those.
And again, it's going to be another non-binding straw ballot, so that if you hypothetically decide to improve roads when people said no, or you decide to improve roads and do a special assessment for them when they said they're not in favor of it, you're not bound but to not do so. It's to provide you feedback which you may use, and that was in that first question, you may use it, you not shall use it. Each of you may take that information and use it differently in formulating the policy. So we're trying to ask a simple, direct question. And the first one with some preface to explain why you're asking the question. This one here, the ultimate question would be, would you be willing to pay for part of the ballot summary is going to be to explain how we got to that question, right? You know, if the town doesn't make a policy, it's going to cost, you know, road improvements cost money, revenues may be insufficient, if they are, would you be in favor of it? That type of thing. I could envision the question.
All right, Dennis, you want to come up? Please.
Dennis Lipp, North Road. I guess the question for the council or for the attorney, do it always have to be yes, no answers, or can it be A, B, C?
Yes, no.
Maybe we have two questions.
Wish we could Scantron it, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, would you be willing to pay more, or would you like to let us pay it on revenue? So it would be two questions as opposed to one.
Okay. All right, so you've got enough direction for
Well,
the back?
If you do a motion to directly prepare that ordinance, I'll bring it back.
Entertained motion?
I'll make them.
Second. Okay, Brian makes a motion, Jim seconds.
And I assume by getting it to the supervisor after the January 6th meeting, still time to get on the ballot,
We're
correct?
okay. We have to have it by February 6th.
Okay.
Okay, so we have it, we need a roll call vote for this.
There's just motion to direct,
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes 5-0. Moving to manager's report.
Okay, very quickly, Mayor and Council. Another busy week. We had some good news, and I've included in here, for instance, Casey Road. We provided some photographs relative to what the road looked like before. We went in and did some hedging and clearing versus afterward. It looks 100% better. We got a letter from Mr. William Cannon, 30-year resident of the town, thanking the town council for River Lane, with a picture of River Lane and its clearance. Those are all positive aspects. Relative to trails, Mike and I met with the district's attorney and Steve Rowe, the administrator, on Friday, the 21st, and outlines aspects that we're looking for in the interlocal and with the permit. We think we've come to agreement on that. We've had some feedback today from the district, and hopefully we'll get something drafted. I don't know if we'll get it by the next meeting in December, maybe first in January. The agreement on the ILA.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get something back. We'll be able to get something to them in the first meeting in January, the latest. That's what our goal is.
But it looks like everything's basically agreed upon, and we're moving in a positive direction. It's a good meeting. Relative to the chamber building, been back to them, had discussions. I did email all the council information that I received from the county administrator relative to the land. They had sent a survey out there Monday a week ago, and did a survey, and they're looking at carving out a piece of the park that the building sits on, north to, I guess, Citrus. Roughly, that's where their land ends. And they did an appraisal. I don't know what that number is. The email did say it would be coming in this week. As staff, he will present it to the county commission. I would urge this commission, the council, to contact the county commission and ask for a grant of that land. He will be representing it as a sale. It has occurred. They have granted land in the past. There's no reason why they can't again. I would encourage you to do that. Mike is working on a contract, a form of contract that we will present to the chamber. The last number basically will be incorporated with the proviso that the land come to the town from the council. That agreement, hopefully, we'll get it over to the chamber to look at and see if they have issues or problems with it. If they're in concert and we get some positive feedback from county administration and or the county commission, then we will bring it to you the next meeting, December 16th. Otherwise, it'll be the first meeting in June. B Road, at the same Friday, Mike and I attended the B Road development meeting. It appears as though they've made a lot of progress. I think the three parties are getting close, Mike, would you say?
No, they're expected to get close. I hope they're getting close.
We think they're getting close. At least one of the
You
parties.
wish they were. That's the real lesson. You wish.
I reiterated the council's position that we are here to assist and facilitate the development of B Road with the district's assistance, but our total contribution monetarily will be zero. I reiterated that again. They all understand that's the road we're heading down. And finally, there was I received a letter from the Department of Planning and Zoning of Palm Beach County relative to the relief of a easement, right-of-way easement between North Lake Boulevard and Beeline Highway for State Road 7. It's only here for information. If you wanted specific action, you wanted us to take position, or you wanted to take a position, we would ask that you provide that position now, and you could either do it through instructing or asking Mike to draft a resolution, or you could ignore it and we can just go on down the road. That's the end of my report, Mayor.
Okay. Ron?
Bill is a 53-year resident on 161st Terrace North. A lot of my neighbors came to me, but that was an outstanding job that Choquette did on clearing our road. And my biggest thing is I hope we can maintain it, but no, it was, the money that we paid for those projects was very well spent.
Thank you.
Okay. And just for the public, there, yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Question about the extension of State Road 7 north of North Lake. You know, that actually is something that I believe is sort of like part of a compromise as part of what we as a council voted to do, even though I was against it, to oppose, to be in favor of the extension of State Road 7 to North Lake. Part of the reason for this deleting the northern section north of North Lake is a trade-off. So I think we should probably, to be consistent as a council, support that. And it's just a question of whether I think we ought to do that.
Yeah, if that's important. I mean, I understand why they do it. There's really nothing to be gained by running State Road 7 through there.
Right. And if anything, it adds to possible entitlements for out here in the future by providing a lot of access through that area. So I would suggest that it must be.
Yeah, do you think that we need to send them something saying we're in favor of that? Because it's really just a courtesy notice saying that this is what they're doing.
It is, but you may want to take a position relative to that. That's why I brought it forward.
All right, and it might be good to take a position, Jim.
Well, I disagree with both of you, gentlemen. So I think it's beneficial to the town if we continue that up to Beeline. But I don't know that we have to, or we're, by taking a position is going to make any difference. They are going to hold several public hearings on this, and I presume that's, I'm not going to let them hear what they might want to hear, but I'm not in favor of them discontinuing that piece.
Right. You know, I mean, I look at it because of the shape of Beeline and everything else. Anybody going east on Beeline is just going to turn right down North Lake. Anybody going to go west is going to go left out to where the Seminole Pratt goes through Beeline. So there really is very little to be gained by that road going through there.
A great deal of wetland and environment.
And a great deal of wetland. I mean, that's right through that.
But I don't know that your assumption that they're going to take Seminole Pratt up to Beeline, I don't know that it's ever going to happen. So, I mean, yeah, I agree with you. If that was in play, then that would be a better route. But there is some certain amount of traffic that goes out and up Beeline that would alleviate that. And I think it's more in my mind. I don't know if Tom knows for sure that this was a negotiated type of thing. I thought, from what I heard, also that was a done deal up to North Lake, and it wasn't anything that we had to backtrack on or to offer up to get that point to that point. And the concern I have is that there is a certain amount of traffic that ends up going up Beeline off of North Lake, and just because there's a development going across the street that kind of has all the options to go either way, we seem to, I'm concerned that there's some money in play here that is not necessarily the best interest as we've been told for the western communities. That's my perspective.
Okay. Ron?
I spoke with, I wanted to find out how most of the western communities felt on that. I spoke with Royal Palm Beach, I touched base with Wellington. I didn't hit Indian Trail, but basically they've agreed all along that it would stop at North Lake. Now the goal that people have talked about, they haven't made any commitment in the ideal situation for hurricane exit and stuff like that is Seminole Pratt Whitney. We need to stress and memento when they start operations and stuff. Seminole Pratt Whitney is the ideal road to exit out if we have to all the way to the Beeline. But no, I felt like if Royal Palm Beach and them was against this, then we would support them as a western type community thing. But they said they basically had an understanding all along that it would stop at North Lake. So I say we get it on and we don't really need to let it.
This week in the paper, they had announced that the Department, Florida Department of Transportation had mitigated and met all of the problems with the State Road 7 to North Lake, and therefore there was no longer any hindrance.
Right.
They closed up the size of it a little bit, and they took this piece out. So I think it was part of what they did to satisfy and allow them to go ahead and build State Road 7, which is really the important part for us.
That is important. I mean, I agree with what Ron's talking about. If some of the problems in play, then certainly is a better answer.
I know that is, we've already gone on record.
Perhaps we can, well, maybe that's the letter we should send, is, we're on record as supporting the extension of Seminole Pratt, and we approve the resolution of 441, we make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion
A letter for the mayor's signature?
yes, to encourage them to continue the fight to put Seminole Pratt all the way through the B-line, for emergency access and egress, and that we agree with them, or we're okay with,
Support the deletion of this,
we're all right with the deletion of the other. Is there a second to that?
If we may, Mr. Mayor, possibly link the concept that it's a great replacement for that.
Okay.
And we agree with their decision, but the reason we're bringing it up is we still have that link to
there's
go.
still a need. There's still a need.
It's a good replacement that we would like to see it pursue.
So we'll say those two things.
Right.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
You're sleeping.
Yeah. All right, any further discussion on that? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to old business, 9A.
So, this has been a very long, arduous process. The FAAC at its last meeting heard a recommendation relative to software for the town. And I've been a proponent since I've been here that the town control its data and its software. And the best mechanism for the town is through a software agreement service, SaaS. The committee reviewed 3 vendors. The one that is being recommended by the committee and staff is Blackbaud. We did check their references with Supervisor of Elections and Gulfstream. Both those gave positive response. In our discussions with them, they also came back and reduced the fee again. We are recommending a minimum of a 5-year contract for you. They've agreed that the startup costs, the migration, et cetera, is being reduced from the original proposal from $11,999 to $10,688. And thereafter, the price goes down. In years 2 and 3, there's additional training in the event it's needed. And then years 4 and 5, it's roughly $6,000, $5,988. The issue that we're looking for is authorization of the town attorney and staff to prepare the agreement with Blackbaud, and bring that back to you.
Okay.
I was going to make a motion.
What was it? Give me a total 5-year ticket.
The total 5-year ticket, $38,640.
Okay, and you expect thereafter that annual fee to be $10,000 a year? You don't have an expectation?
I have no expectation. In fact, we can lock in 5. I'd be very happy if you would like me to try to lock in a longer period of time, I would do that.
No, I'm just wondering what, that's, if you give us a total, and we looked at 5 years, that's about $6,000 a year for what you just said, I think. So I'm just wondering if you would anticipate that.
A little over 7.
7.
That we would have, that kind of number there going forward.
I really don't know.
Okay.
So we got 2 notes in 5 years, what's going to be available, so I mean, they might. things
It
might
could change significantly, and nobody's using computers at all anymore, they're using their watch.
It's in the cloud. Yeah.
Well, we're dealing with cloud.
Okay, Tom's going to make a motion,
I'd
right?
make a motion,
Second by Ryan. Motion by Tom. Further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Passes 5-0. Moving to 10A, and I'll remind you, it is 20 after 9. So we've got 10 minutes. All right.
Here we go. Proposal is, rather than our current situation in which we have an annual election, well, we have an election annually, based on the way that the council terms are, which is 3-year terms, and they stagger one person elected in one, 2 people elected another year, 2 people elected another year. I'm proposing, very simply, that we switch to 3 people elected for a 4-year term, and 2 people elected for a 4-year term, and that we stagger that where 2 of the, I think it's the first 2 terms start in the end of the term that's coming. If whosoever is elected, we'll put it that way. That will go for 3 years. That will end in 2018. My proposal would be that in 2018, when that election comes, that those extend for 4 years. And that the term of the people who comes up in 2016 begins for 4 years. Michael, how do we deal with the other one that's in and out of here?
Yeah, we've done this in a couple places to change terms to go staggered to, 4 years. Sometimes one place went back to 3 years, but anyway. You have to deal with in the question, first of all, would be another referendum. It would be a charter amendment, because your charter right now provides for 3-year terms. And we would provide in that ordinance that you're amending it to provide for 4-year terms with these 2 seats in these years and these 3 seats in the other years. I talked with the councilman briefly, so I kind of mapped out, how you would implement it, because you have to work with the clerk to get it right, to confirm seat numbers and whatnot. But you have to get to those even years. So, as the councilman described, the 2 seats that are up in March of 2015 would continue to be, that election would be a 3-year term, but the next time they come up in 2018, that'd be for 4-year term. The 2 seats that are coming up in 2016 would be for a 4-year term to get them to 2020. The 1 seat that was elected this year is a 3-year term, which ends in an odd year. And in those situations and the other places we've done staggered terms, the referendum had called for that term to be extended to the next even number. So then that's by a vote of the folks. If they approve the staggering, part of that would be that the seat that was elected this year would go to 2018 instead of 2017. So beginning in 2017, in your odd years, you wouldn't have elections.
And the benefit is that you don't have election every year, you have it every 2 years. You have it in the same year as either the governor or the presidential. Now unless you move it to November, that doesn't really matter, but you have it in those same cycles.
Okay.
And it saves us money because you don't have them as often. I think it will save a little bit of the emotional and stress that goes on with politics all the time, because you have a longer period of time in office, and it doesn't make every year an election. It does keep a particular council in power longer if people may have a problem with the councilman. It's a year, it's an extension of 33% overall, but it is a savings to the town of half in your elections, because you're not going to have half the elections. So you are saving money, and you are doing that as through a referendum, not through the council action.
Okay, so this would have to come back, and then
If they would have to prepare an ordinance the same way to come back for the next meeting to do that.
I would need a motion from the council to directly prepare that ordinance to just bring it back to you for first reading at the next meeting.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't see any reason to change it. I think saving money every couple of years, and I just don't see it. I don't know why we would want to change it. I don't really see benefit.
anybody else?
I can see the benefits, but I'll be honest with you, we got people now that would like for us to 8 years and get off the seat here. So, you know, when you're trying to stretch it.
That actually was something I was gonna bring up too,
But no, if we put it to a referendum, then basically the people will speak, and I would think that, but no, I'm like Jim, you know, 3 years, and then give somebody else a chance to run, you know, I think that's fair. 4 years just makes it harder on people that would like to get on the council, so.
I think the process we have right now is if somebody wants to get on the council, there is an election every year. And if they want to run, they could run that next year. And, you know, in 2 years at a time, I mean, you're electing 3 people at a time, so you're basically in one election electing the controlling part of the council. Conceivably. So, you know, if something happened and certain people didn't turn out, you know, because sometimes I think they're, you know, I don't know. You know, my thought is, I kind of agree with Jim, that it's not broke, you know, fix it. I like the idea, since our election does not line up at the same time that the governor and everybody else does, you know, and we probably will have issues every year that we'll be wanting to bring before the voters. So I don't mind getting them in the habit of voting every year.
just an idea.
But I like the idea of saving money.
Two other quick, well, that's part of it. 2 other quick ideas. One is term limits, which Ron alluded to. The second is, and it involves more work, is to elect based on districts versus seats, where you would have a situation where perhaps you would have 2 councilmen elected from one part of town, 2 from another part of town, 1 at large, or however you want to do that. There's definitely people who complain that we don't know before we look. So there's people who feel somewhat disenfranchised. But I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that it's one of the things that over the course of time that was brought up and discussed, that term limits being one and the possibility of districts being another. So if there's any interest in any of those that we could bring up in the future, as far as districts goes, Mike would need to do some demographic research because they have to be balanced.
Yeah, that would be something that would not be ready for the March election.
And I'm not, even with districts, I'm not saying there should be an individual district for every individual councilman, maybe more than just so many come from here and so many come from there. Just ideas to, have no less interest in it.
Anybody's thoughts?
I'm not interested in either one of these.
No, I really am not. I'm afraid that we're, in some ways, and I would hate to see someday our community almost become south of Okeechobee and north of Okeechobee, and that's something we're going to have to fight with the county widening Okeechobee, and I'm just afraid it's going to put more of a split in our community that's already happening by logistics.
Right. The only other, and this is a forward-thinking, planning type of a point, is to prepare and elect from districts would enable a future annexation of other areas that may want to be part of the town, and in a way that would enable the original town to have its representation and the new areas to have theirs. If there is any desire or concern for a future.
You mean like over on the west area?
Say to go west to the canal that's west of Slaughter, or go to west of wherever. Or go east to Earl Palm Beach or Little Island. I mean, there's all sorts of different directions you can go. Right away but south.
And my comment on that is if we ever wanted to annex somebody in for the revenue that we could possibly get, I would want to keep them as a separate district, keep Loxahatchee as a whole, make them a separate district in Loxahatchee, but only allow them 2 votes on the seats. So the majority has to stay with the people of Loxahatchee, so, but.
I don't know.
It sort of works to that.
We can do that if we annex
I think we still have the ability, if we ever wanted to do that, we could annex.
But, you know, with one person, one vote, and equal representation, you know, you have to, that's why it's difficult to do districts, and you have to do studies. You know, and cities that have districts have to engage in regular reviews of those districts every so often, every 5 years, 10 years or something. To ensure that
I know
there's.
that's interesting, any of the three concepts, I just want to bring them up and things that have been discussed, so.
My concern has always been when we change, if we ever consider annexing something else, there is not a community next to us that reflects the same size of lots and homesteads and everything else that we have. That's not already part of Black Century Road. I mean, if you go just west of where they're, 161st.
If you go along Southern, it's all 5 acres all the way to out to the side.
Well, yeah, but you don't have to come in very far off of Southern in their acre and quarter lots.
Right on Seminole Practice.
Yeah, so you'd have
That
to,
little,
yeah,
but that's also part of the trail that he did.
right, okay, yeah. We would have a fight for the Indian Trail.
No, I don't want any of the Indian Trail.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Wrong on home.
And everybody, we're good with, moving to 11, closing comments. Public, got Marge, what up?
March Herzog, A Road. I just wanted to remind everyone that on December 18th, we have our potluck dinner at the Loxahatchee Groves Landowners Association. It starts at 7. You bring an item, main meal type item, vegetable or meat or whatever. And the landowners are providing the soft drinks, the appetizers, and the desserts. Starts at 7. Bring a $5 grab bag, usually a gag type gift. Also, we always have a candidates forum in February for anyone who is running for the town council. So if at that time you wanted to appoint someone to be the representative to explain all of the referendum items, that might be a good opportunity because we get a good turnout for that.
Thank you, Mark.
So when people start signing up for running, make them aware that there is a candidates forum already on the February.
Good deal. Thank you. All right, Mike?
I have no report. I need to defer the bill for a report.
And the report is, go Mizzou.
My season is, my regular season is done.
Mizzou.
His regular season is done.
I say go Gators though.
We're still go.
Council members, Tom?
That's it. We're an hour late.
Ron?
Everybody be safe going home. Thanks for coming and chop chop.
Ryan?
Thanks for coming, and hopefully we'll stay warm this winter.
And Jim?
Thank you all for coming.
And thank you, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Rezo is right here.
Yes.
We got just pass this on around town, and you just sign
We should have done a better job.